try and put together all three of the readings, but we'll see. We need to look at them separately, first of all, though. The first reading is from the Book of Wisdom, and it's one of those books they call the Apocrypha. And again, it needs to be repeated. The Apocrypha are simply a set of books that belong to the Jewish scriptures for a long time. And then about the time of the Nicene Synod that met that defined the Nicene Creed for the Christians, another group of Jewish leaders was meeting, within around a 50-year period, to define what their scriptures were going to be like, what would really be part of the Jewish scripture. And what the Jews decided to do was to not accept as part of their scriptures any book that was written in Greek, okay? And the Book of Wisdom was written by a Jew who was a Greek. And he is trying to capture some of the Jewish thought, and he's attributing it to the time of Solomon. But it certainly wasn't back then. It was written probably 60 years before Jesus died, before Jesus was born. So that period is when this book, the Book of Wisdom, was written. Now, when I say he was a Greek, it's really important to realize this. I think I've said this here another time, and maybe I haven't. One of the great changes that took place in the early Christian church was that we stopped thinking as Semites. And a Semite thinks in a way of both ends. This is true and this is true. This is both of them are true, both this and this. You read the scriptures, and by and large, Paul's a minute exception in there, but by and large, the Gospels are written from a Semitic point of view. This is true and this is true. Jesus said this one time, and he said the opposite another time. It shifted from that both and in the first 150 years to a way of Greek philosophy and Greek thinking, which was a dualistic way of thinking. There's right or wrong, good or bad, either or, not both and. Not both and. And this dualism is expressed very clearly in today's first reading, when he says in the first reading that for the corruptible body burdens the soul, and the earthen shelter weighs down the mind that has many concerns. Well, there's a split there between body and soul. And guess who's the winner? The soul is. And who's the bad guy? The body. This was never a Semitic way of presenting who we are. In the whole scripture it says, God made everything good. And he made us very good, these bodied spirits. We are one. We are not two parts. We are not a rider and a horse, the rider being the spirit and the horse the body, and we beat it to make it do what it's supposed to do. So I can see good reason why the Jews would reject some of the thinking that was going on in this book of wisdom, because it had become very Greek-oriented in thought. But by the time the time Nicaea came along, we were thinking like Greeks already. One thing just to keep in mind there. The second reading, Onesimus was a slave, probably in Jerusalem. He belonged to a man who converted to Christianity. But at that time, you have to put yourself into the context of what slavery was all about. There was probably no major city in the world, certainly in the Western world, the Roman world, where at least half the people were not slaves. Wars were waged to gain slaves. Slaves became integrated into the community. They were part of the community. You can see that in so many different times. Remember when Newman, the leper, was coming to be healed of his leprosy, and the little girl, who was a slave girl, had enough love for him to say, go and ask the people in Israel. Go ahead and ask Elisha, the prophet, and Elisha will help you. This little girl was a slave girl, but had been accepted into that culture, and she felt she belonged. My point is, there are slaves throughout the whole of this region, all over. Now, Onesimus, he did not want to be a slave anymore. And so he ran. But before he had run, he became, along with his owner, a Christian. And the place he wanted to go where he felt most safe was Rome. with Paul. And he finds Paul in Paul's old age in prison. And you have to picture again, Paul's not sitting in some prison like we have or they had, like bars. He's house arrest kind of thing, okay? And he starts to serve or to work for Paul. And Paul wants what is best for Onesimus. And so he tells him, I want you to go back to your owner, and I will write a letter. And will you risk that your owner will respond in such a way as to set you free? Which is salvation, by the way. And he writes this letter that we heard just now, asking his friend to realize that Onesimus is no longer a slave. Onesimus is a loved brother, a believer in Jesus, but more than that, a beloved brother to God and to Paul. And he says to the owner, I'm not trying to force you. I want you to do this of your own self, of your own realization that this man and slave should be set free. 150 years ago, we fought a war to set slaves free. We passed laws to set slaves free. We passed laws to get voting rights in. We did all those things with laws, and laws don't work. It's a change in heart. That's what people have criticized Paul for, not passing a law or saying no more slavery. He was begging us, change your heart. So only by changing your heart will we change at all. He said, I don't want you to do this because I'm telling you to. I'm doing this, asking this, so you, of your own freedom, your knowledge of God and of what God is in this person, to set him free. You cannot possess him. You should not possess him. Which leads me to the gospel. The gospel has two parables at the very end that I'll be able to talk about, but they don't take up much of the time. The two gospels, or the two preceding stories, you must hate your mother, brother, wife, child. We hear that, and we say, come on now. You can't be serious. Well, you got to understand what that word hate doesn't mean what we mean by hate. You can find that very same passage in Matthew chapter 10, verse 37, I think it is, where Matthew has the very same statement. He says, you must love your husband, your wife, your children, your parents less than you love your God. You must love them less than you love your God. You must find some kind of ability to separate from them. They cannot be your God, and they are not your possessions. Now, when I've preached on this before in parishes, there's been a reaction among some who'd say, well, that's very nice, Father. You're neither married nor you have children, so what are you talking about? Well, they're right. On one level, I've not experienced that. The love of a spouse, the love of a child, my love for a child. I have not experienced that, no. But I hold up to you this. Any parent that loves a child as a possession is not going to help that child. You will overpossess it and be able to think you can treat that child any way you want. And there are horror stories about that. But move it more towards the middle, and you find other people who demand that the child be a reincarnation of who they think they wanted to be. You are my son, you are my daughter. If you think your child is a possession, you are wrong. Your child is a responsibility and a gift. Conversely, on the other side, if you think your child is God, you're in bigger trouble. You're in a lot of trouble there, because then who rules the roost? Who tells you what to do? The little God over here, the God who runs everything. And you know what? I hear so many people tell me, I'll do anything to have my child happy. Nonsense. Happiness lasts about that long. And then they're off thinking about something else. And I'm going to give my life so my child has that much happiness. Nonsense. I might give my life that my child might have the life with God, but I won't give my life for anybody so that they get a big grin. Come on. Nobody's my God. The ones I love most deeply still are not my gods. And you've got great friends. You're tied to your family. You're looking forward to having children of your own. Think about what is being said here. They are not a possession. They are not God. Detach yourself. Detach yourself from them. And you will allow them to live and to grow and to become whom God asks them to be. We cannot possess. We cannot possess people, Onesimus. We cannot possess our family or our children or our friends. And certainly it applies to we cannot possess things, because the things that we possess us. Let go. The last words are, if you don't give everything away, what he's saying there again, he uses hyperbole that gets your attention. You have to let go of stuff, be detached from stuff. I cannot think of one thing in my life that I give much of a care for. I don't lock my doors because I got nothing to steal. I don't lock my car because who wants it? Maybe that's not a virtue, but at least I'm not attached to anything. What are you attached to? I suppose if I said that I'm attached to TV, there might be some truth there. But I think we all have that same problem. Your TV might be smaller than mine, but at the same time, there's a truth there. Can we let go? Can we be detached?